What's up, YouTube? Mr. Llama here, and today I want to talk a little bit about Path of Exile 2 Endgame. Now, the more that I've played into this Endgame, the further I feel it is actually the vision of Path of Exile 2. And what I mean by that is, Endgame feels like a complete opposite of what Path of Exile 2 starts out and builds up to be, right? When you're playing through the base game, there is difficulty in this back and forth, really great combat that you're getting in the campaign. You can respawn on death. You can respawn at checkpoints. There's checkpoints before boss fights. You go in, there's a hard boss fight, you die, you respawn, you go again, you try again. You do it a few times, you learn the boss's different moves, how it telegraphs everything. Okay, now I know when he does this, audio cue or this, I need to go here. Like, there's all these pieces to learn, and it's great for all of that. There's really great density in the campaign. I think that's something that doesn't get talked about enough, but the density of monsters feels really solid, like near perfect. You don't feel like you're running around and there's just nothing ever, but at the same time, you don't feel like you're running around and it's just constantly monsters always on top of you. Different zones have different densities. It just feels really solid. And then, of course, also within the campaign, there's a lot of tutorials to kind of teach you some basic things along the way. So I felt like coming in, yes, I had some PoE 1 experience, but with Path of Exile 2, I felt like I could come in still, and it would teach me some new ways that things worked, and I never felt confused, which I will say in Path of Exile 1, I felt confused many times when I played through, even after hundreds of hours. Sometimes I'd come back in and I'd still be like, what is this doing? What is this mechanic? Why are these like this? There was still a lot of confusion. So I think they've done a fantastic job there in clearing that up. But once you get to the end game, and honestly, kind of in Cruel, it starts to lose the vision, right? Where you start to just get too powerful and you lose a lot of the good combat and stuff. But it's really in the end game that you just start to get into the absurdity where instead of difficult back and forth combat, it's just kind of one-shots both ways, right? You either are getting one shot or one-shotting everything. And again, that kind of reflects how I feel when I would be in Path of Exile 1. I'm running around, nothing matters, all the mobs are just paper thin, blowing up everywhere. And then there's a reflect mob, or there's whatever, and I just go, poof, and I'm dead. And I'm like, okay. One portal. Literally, that's like the complete opposite of how the game teaches you, which is you will go in, it will be difficult, you'll have hard fights, but you'll get multiple attempts at it. Literally coming back and going into one portal and then that's it feels terrible. And then I tried to do party play and I died and my party member was still in the map and I just had to like sit in town and wait for them to do it. And it was like, well, this isn't very fun. Then you take that even further into boss fights and it completely, again, there's no learning these boss fights and applying what you learn or anything because you just die. And if you spend hours and hours building up to get to a pinnacle boss, which it feels like are meant to be learned through fighting them, and then you die, you just lose all that progress to get there. And it's like, what is this experience? What are they trying to do with it? It doesn't feel like it matches. It's very confusing. And on top of losing the pinnacle boss, the hours to get there, you're losing the Atlas map mods, you're losing the waystones, you're losing the experience, you're losing any of the loot within the maps that, whenever you're there. I mean, it's like so punishing. And I like punishing. That's the thing. I enjoy when a game is hard. I enjoy when a game is punishing. I think the early campaign, 1, 2, 3, is punishing, but you have to be able to give back some. And it feels like in the end game, you're not getting that. You don't have any checkpoints. There's an overwhelming amount of normal mob density, right? The great density that I was talking about earlier on in the campaign, it feels like when you get to maps, it just kind of like floods more and it's just like too much. But again, they don't matter. They just kind of explode everywhere. It feels like there's not enough bosses overall. There's way too many just like rares And then the backtracking for all of the rares is very tedious and annoying. Like Diablo 4, has the backtracking. Don't bring that over to this game. It's not a fun experience to run through the entire map and then see one rare way down here in this little spot. And of course, there's no checkpoints or anything, so you just have to run all the way down to kill the one rare. And it's like, one, I wish there were just more bosses instead, in the maps. But two, the backtracking is just not fun. And then, lastly, with the differences, right? There's kind of a lack of tutorials in the end game. Like I say, when I was playing through the entire campaign, I actually felt really great. I felt like the game was explaining things at an appropriate pace, not overwhelming me, but not, like giving me hand holding, right? Where it's annoying and it's like arrows pointing where you need to go. Like I really appreciated many of the quests. I'd have to think a little and it wouldn't tell you exactly. And then, okay, I got to maybe do this. And, like it was an appropriate pace and an appropriate amount of guidance. But in the end game, honestly, I was very confused for a while. There were just a lot of systems and ways that things worked that I didn't really understand. I didn't feel like it was explained properly. I'm guessing some of this has to do with they kind of threw Endgame together more at the end, right? He said they spent a lot of time on the campaign, and then they spent like 6 months or something on the Endgame. They kind of shifted away from Acts 4, 5, and 6 into getting a good Endgame in there. But I don't think it worked out, if I'm going to be honest. I don't think the end game is nearly as enjoyable. When I play through a character and finish up Cruel, all I want to do is start a new character and play the campaign again because I just don't want to get into the end game. It's just not that fun of an experience. There's other notes on it that I'm not really in comparison, but it's other notes. On death effects are still awful. They removed, the volatile crystals, which was great, but honestly, there's still too many on death effects and they're just tiring. It's just super exhausting to always have to watch after I kill stuff and just want to pick up my loot. Oh, is there that, on death? And then of course, with how much stuff is on the screen, they're even worse, right? It's like you can't even see it all the time. And then you have the false blow ups. Whenever you kill a rare in a map, it does an on death explosion, but it doesn't actually deal damage. So it's like the false positives, and those are still exhausting me. I'm still like not over those. I just want all of them gone. Many fights, including bosses and especially bosses, feel like delete them before they do anything. And so that's like not very fun, right? It feels like some of the fights have really gone away from, again, the campaign fights where it felt more engaging. And these ones are like, you better have enough DPS to just take care of them before they'll just murder you. The Atlas system, I actually find less rewarding personally. I don't know how other people feel about it. But just the like mapping world, I feel is maybe doesn't have enough direction to it. And so I don't feel like it's driving me as much towards a goal. Like in PoE 1, I actually thought it was really great. I actually really loved when you got to the end game and you were doing your tier 1, tier 2, you'd be moving up towards your red maps and you'd kind of see your progress growing. And here I don't really feel that. I don't feel much progress. I just kind of feel like I'm wandering aimlessly around. And so I think the idea is cute, but it's in practice, it's not working for me. Again, that may just be my personal opinion. I'd love to hear if other people have found more, enjoyment with that system. A big one, rarity applying to items and currency is really messing a lot of stuff up. And just the amount that it actually affects is totally imbalanced. So I actually love Magic Find. Like, not a lot of people like Magic Find in Diablo 2, right? Obviously, I'm a Diablo 2 guy. I actually love it in Diablo 2. I think it's not perfectly balanced. It's, maybe a little too much on some of the best in slot items. It's a little too hard to get on like a Boazon or characters like that. But overall, I think it's pretty good. And I like the idea that you sacrifice some power or survivability or something for diminishing returns of higher chances at rare items. You're not increasing your rune drops. You're not increasing your quantity of items. You're not increasing the tier of the items that are dropping or anything else. You're just increasing the chance that an item will roll magic or roll rare or unique or set, right? Just slightly increasing those. And again, at diminishing returns. In PoE 2, I feel like rarity is just like bonkers, right? I'm just like, when I go from 20 rarity to 200 rarity, suddenly I'm dropping exalts left and right and alchemy and just, everything is just flooding in. And applying it to currency, applying it to just everything it's way too much. It's way too good. And it just does not fit very well. And it feels like it's going to kind of ruin the economy. And it's also just like promoting the wrong stuff. So I would love for them to go back and take a relook at this, probably nerf it way down, get it off of currency increase, and just have nothing to do with affecting currency. And then I think what they could do with it as well is they could actually tie that to survivability in a way, right? So we have 6 portals. Maybe you can start sacking some portals for some rarity. Obviously, you have to be careful of balancing this too much so it's not like everybody just, drops down and runs tier 10 maps or whatever when they're, say, the T15s on 1 life and just barrels through that or anything. But there could be some way that you could have a balance of rarity versus what you're getting. But overall, I think you have to balance kind of the endgame systems better first. Because again, right now, when you're just flying through and one-shotting everything all over the place and combat's lost all that meaning, it doesn't like have any good effect or good feeling, as opposed to campaign acts 1, 2, 3. When I'm going through acts 1, 2, and 3, now if I were to be sacking useful mods for rarity, I would feel it a lot more, right? Like, man, I feel like every single mod I can get in the campaign actually matters. And so it's a very different feeling between early and late. And I will say, I do think that you want to have good power increase, right? You don't want to feel like your character is not increasing in power at all as they move forward in the game. But there is a proper line that you go on, and I feel like in PoE 2 it's lost it, right? It jumps off of that and it really starts to shoot up into just the absurd territory. And again, the unenjoyable territory for me. Maybe people who love Path of Exile 1, it's more enjoyable for them and they're like, this is great, I want this. But I know, at least for me, again, just sharing my personal opinion, when I get there, like I say, I just want to go play the campaign again. I'm like, the campaign is the best part of this game by far. And their visions, again, it doesn't match up. And I think that's the almost the biggest issue that I have, is everything you learn from the campaign, it just like doesn't apply to the end game. It feels like a completely separate game kind of tacked on at the end, and it's not cohesive. So I would like to see them make some changes. I think they will. Obviously, they're on break for the holidays right now. But I do think, when they come back, that'll be something they address. I know a lot of people have their own issues with Endgame. I'm sure there's other issues I didn't cover. I'd be interested to hear what your guys' thoughts are on it as well. But I just, the more I've played it, the more I've really thought on it. And I felt like I want to put my thoughts out there. And again, it's early access, so we give them feedback and see what they do. So I'd be curious how you guys feel. Go ahead and leave a comment down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace, YouTube.